There's Susan.
She's giving a tour of her house.
Right.
I think she's muted.
She is still muted. There we go.
Rob, I was wondering whether you were going to drop in or you were just going to dump us on poor Brian.
No, I gotta do the proper introduction. I tell you, Brian has already brought $50,000 into the local business community over the last week. So
Yeah.
Excellent.
Great.
I'm trying. Well, Larry, whenever you're ready to get the ball rolling, I think the floor is yours.
Okay. I'll call your meeting to order at 7:06. We got to do the roll call. Larry Fish here.
Tom Ritliff.
Jay Newsom,
Henry Thayer.
Ian Smith,
Joanna Esposito.
Susan, you need to.
Tricia Gardner.
Oh,
You need to unmute, Susan.
I did.
yeah.
Now you are.
Now.
Okay.
Go ahead, say it.
Susan Marcus.
All right. And our new liaison, Brian Wagner and Rob Zaneski. Okay. So we have a lot of minutes to approve. Susan, have you had a chance to go through them all?
I went through some of them, not all of them. I didn't see any problems. I missed a meeting, but
Rob, you get less and less content in your minutes. I love it.
well, I mean, you know, the conversation sort of are easily summarized, which is a wonderful thing, actually.
Yep.
Brevity should be appreciated.
We're
Yeah.
hitting the
All you
same
need-
points,
all
which
you-
means that we've identified the ones that really need to be paid attention to.
all you need in the minutes is decisions in any case.
That's right. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
one
you
of
can
the
just
things
say we
that-
discussed all these things on the agenda and then,
Right. It's actually one of the things that I think we could do better, because meeting minutes, you know, we've had cases where people come in and they say the meeting minutes don't say you did that. You go back to the tape and you know exactly what happened. So it's, you know, I don't know. When we're recording everything, there's a good permanent public record of what happened at every single meeting. The meeting minutes, you know, somebody's editorial decisions make a difference. So
sure.
you can go to the tape. It's always better.
Patty Gardner, would you unmute yourself and say you're here, please? If you're there.
I thought I did. I did right before Susan.
Or I got you in here twice.
Yeah, I don't get video on my laptop, so.
Okay, no problem. All right, so we got the roll call. Did anybody have any issues with any of the minutes? I'd rather do all four at once if we can do it.
I think you just need the attendance on.
Yeah. One of them.
the-
Yes, there was a meeting for which tape, so I was just talking about how great the tapes are. There was a meeting was a meeting at which the tape was not available. That is an issue.
Okay,
So we're gonna have to go back and reconstruct.
all right, so why don't we get a motion to approve all the minutes but the May 7th, and then we'll do the May 7th. We'll all chime in on that. How's that?
I move
Do I
to
hear a
approve.
motion? Thank you,
Second.
Tom.
Yep.
Thank you, Joanne. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Passes. All right, now let's go into the 7th.
So you want to know who went. I know I was there for that, listening in on that one. So if you want to just jot these down.
Yep.
7th, okay.
I was there.
I was there too.
I was there.
I was there. Tom Ridliff.
All right, yeah, let's do this by name because I got Joanne, I got Larry, I got Henry.
Tom Ridliff, I was there.
Okay,
Brian Smith, I was there.
okay.
We've lost Jay Newsom. Is Jay back in the attend?
Yeah, he got bumped. What happened? He must have.
I'm pretty sure Jay was there on that meeting as well.
Yes. Susan, were you at that one?
I don't know. I'm going to check. I couldn't.
You
find-
were.
Yeah, you were, Susan, because you helped when we did that little reconstruction project.
Oh, good. I was there.
Which one was that? What was
May-
the date again?
Okay. May 7th.
May 7th.
I had to be there.
You
Yeah.
were. I recall you being there.
All right. And Patty?
I think I was. I think stuff with my mom was over by then. Topic sounds familiar.
Very, very detailed, Rob.
Well, we weren't working with a tape.
All right.
All right, so now you have the attendance. Anybody have any issues with it? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
As amended
to
for
approve.
attendees. Yep.
All right,
Second the motion.
all right. Second that, that was Jay that seconded that, Brian. Joanne made the motion.
Okay,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
All right.
Oh,
I,
Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. Next item. I gotta get it. There it is. Was there any correspondence or public comment? I don't think so.
I don't have any unless Rob has any.
No.
No, there's no correspondence to the committee.
Okay. Let's go into the COVID-19 reopening plans. What's the update on that?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to introduce Brian Wagner so everybody knows who he is. And it's actually a really nice foray because, as I alluded to, Brian just got $50,000 worth of COVID funding for small businesses here in South Kingstown. Brian has been with the planning department for about 6 months now. I think he started the week before we went COVID crazy.
No, the day we went
The
COVID.
day we went COVID crazy. Perfect.
All my fault.
That may be. So he's been in the office with fewer people in the office than is usually the case, but he's been doing great, sort of, learning what's going on in the planning department and really diving in and taking on projects that are, again, not usual, but are necessary at this point in time. One of the projects Brian took on was what are we calling it? The state program is called Take It Outside.
Oh, yeah.
The grant program that the state announced a couple of weeks ago to make money available to small businesses to continue retail and restaurant service through the fall and early winter. And Brian, dived right in. That application was noticed on a Wednesday with a Tuesday the next week deadline, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yep.
very little time to pull it all together and make it work. Brian was able to get an application together for small businesses here in town and was successful in getting us $50,000.
Hooray.
What did you
Bravo.
search for? What did you try to get? Like the outside heaters or?
Yeah, that's pretty much, it's the tent heater electricity grant program, basically. We were able to get word out. Rob got word out to the Southern Rhode Island Chamber. They got word out to members. So it was sort of a scramble just to get people to submit some lists of equipment that they were looking for. And we were able to get a few of them and get a grant application in. And we just put in for the second round of that grant this afternoon. So
Great.
get a little bit more money, I hope.
So
And how do you decide who gets that money in town?
Well, we solicited people to put in their own applications with lists and expenses of equipment they wanted to buy to extend their businesses out of doors. And we're distributing to those people that applied. We didn't get all the money that we asked for, so, you know, not everybody got everything that they were looking for, but we did the best that we could to spread it around.
So just to sort of give folks a sense of Brian's background and experience, he comes to South Kingstown, the planning department, with a certificate in planning, but he's also he's a recovering attorney, I suppose is fair to say.
Just like you.
Successful career. His was successful. Mine ended with the bubble bursting in 2008. But yes, he's got a wide skill set, you know, just a very interesting perspective. You may remember, Brian, if you think about this, he was on the team that did the Old Tower Hill Road and Kingston Road evaluation as part of, oh God, I'm going to forget, Will Green's.
Wow.
He was part of the class that did that project. So went back to school and found himself a job with us.
And
Welcome.
enjoying it quite a bit for this last 6 months. So I'm happy to be here.
Welcome aboard.
Yep.
As part of the extension, I believe it's called, of the outdoor approval process, I was told by one guy that was kind of surprised that it only got extended till December 8th. Was there a reason for that? Because I guess some of the equipment that they got, they could go right straight through a lot longer than that.
So there's a couple of things about the outdoor service area. First of all, you remember that the outdoor service area, temporary outdoor service area extension was done initially as an executive order.
Right.
The council ratified that action by putting an ordinance in place. The ordinance expired 6 months after, by its own terms, it expired 6 months after its ratification, which was June 8th. So December 8th is the end of the law that allows it to happen. That's why. We will be coming back before the council and looking for an extension of that, but it's a public hearing and they're going to have to deal with that in due time.
Rob, with the lack of stimulus being approved, how are the small businesses doing in a nutshell?
So I think it's fair to say construction is still strong. In fact, construction is kind of booming. We were looking at our revenue numbers out of the building department today, and we're ahead of what we anticipated. Our budget numbers were put together before COVID, and we're ahead of what we anticipated when we were looking at a no COVID world. So
How much of that is new construction?
that's a good question. I don't know. I was just looking at the revenue numbers, so I can't tell whether it's new or rehab.
I imagine a lot of it's renovation, but
Yeah, I imagine. But then again, we haven't seen a complete shutdown on the new construction either. I mean,
Right.
Everything along the New England shore, the southern New England shore, is doing very well.
Yep.
Everything. I mean, there's just realtors I know from New York to Boston are saying they're busy. They don't have enough inventory to sell. You know, there's just a lot of action.
I mean, a $250,000 house in Pawtucket, there to close the deal, they had to bid $50,000 over asking. That's how hot the real estate market is.
Wow.
I mean, so the biggest problem in the construction is getting the lumber right now.
Materials.
Material
yeah.
prices have gone skyrocketing.
right.
Yeah.
You know?
Tom, that does your point. We had heard of folks who are putting projects off because materials are too expensive.
Right. That's supposed to solve itself by the first of the year, but could slow up some things. But it's going crazy. You couldn't get a pool installed this year. I
Yeah.
mean, I asked my pool guy last week, and he said he's booked out through next August with pools. So that people didn't go anywhere. They refinanced at low interest rates and pulled out money and did renovations.
Mhm.
Sure did.
So that sector is doing fine. Realtors are doing fine. The restaurants, they seem to be doing all right. I will say that, you know, when you look at the hotel numbers through the summer, they actually were surprisingly good. The revenue that we've been, the revenue reports we've gotten from the state on our portion of the hotel tax and even the meal tax, hotel tax for sure, really not very far off what we thought it would be for the year before we were thinking about COVID. Meal taxes are not as strong as we anticipated, which is not surprising, but it's really the only place where, you know, your expectation about what COVID did to the economy is showing up in the data right now. That's not entirely so because, you know, I would say that our planning requests, development requests into the planning department are down slightly, not terribly, but slightly. Permit office, as I say, is doing very well. The economy is a mixed bag. I think that the folks at the low end are hurting hard. I think it's bad if you were in the service industry and, you know, we're relying on the unemployment for a while. At the top end, I think Larry's assessment's exactly right. People, you know, weren't spending their money on lunch, you know, during the week, so they ended up at the end of the month with enough money to buy a pool, but they couldn't get it installed. So, and the economy on the high end is doing well and is distorted from its normal shape. It's hard to know. Generally, overall, revenues right now, we're just in the process of putting together a town revenue report for the council on Tuesday night. Revenues, other than the state revenues, other than pilot payments, other than, you know, the car tax catch up, other than the state revenues, it doesn't look terrible. It just doesn't look terrible. I mean, the recreation department revenue is down, but, you know, overall, it's just not that bad.
That's a lot better than I thought. That's encouraging.
What do we know? What do we know about the people who are not doing well?
So what we know is from really two sources: national reports on what's happening to service sector employees generally nationally, and what we know locally through organizations like the Johnny Cake Center. It's not great. I mean, it's not great, but the folks that don't generally do well in hard economies fall, but they weren't in a great place to begin with. It's a very difficult, I mean, it really is the case that what we're seeing is the economic harm that people suffer is very static. It's very much, you know, more of the same. The rich do well in good and bad economies right now, and the poor do not do well in good or bad economies. And the relative difference is it's all sorts of frustrations. You know, you're now dealing with a landlord who's looking to evict you. You're now looking at more difficulty filling up the gas tank, but
Yeah, so do we know anything about landlords who are evicting people in South Kingstown?
So I spoke to Kate Brewster over at the Johnny Cake Center last week, and the biggest housing problem isn't so much evictions as it is the stock. There's no place for people to move to. You know, if you lose your place, and we are hearing about property owners who have decided that the economy is hot enough, that the real estate market is hot enough, that it's time to sell. So there are people losing rental units because the landlords, the property owners have decided it's time to just cash out of the property. So that does seem to be a thing. And there's not enough housing stock in town that is available for lease. So people are dealing with jacked up prices or having to move out of town. That seems to be the dynamic that's most at play.
Well, housing's always been a problem.
We've got to get affordable housing.
Are we still at 5% of what the state wants us to be at for affordable housing?
5% or less, yes. We're not moving away from that number. We're not moving that number significantly. There's just the problem with the housing program in Rhode Island is that you can never catch up. If you build, I don't know what the numbers are anymore. I used to know this, but if you build 10 units of market rate, then you get to build 2, or you have to build 2 of the low income. If you're building 10 and 2, you're never gonna, the statistics just never level out, because for every 10 units, you've only got 10 affordable units. You're always gonna be just 20%. And you're just never gonna get there. It just doesn't work.
Of course, Jay, I'm sure you could say if the planning board acted on any density changes, people would go up in commercial area, huh?
Well, the planning board did report out the the accessible dwelling unit ordinance at their last meeting, and they reported out the cottage zoning regulation at their last meeting. Although I think they're going to pull that regulation back and make a couple of tweaks on it. They've had some questions raised by the new planning director about whether they can improve the regulation a little bit by providing more flexibility for development and for the design. The architects can sort of, if you tweak the height of the buildings, you can sort of improve the architectural flexibility and make the buildings easier to build, cheaper to build, and better looking. So they're working on that, I think, starting next week. They're going to start thinking about how to improve that regulation.
That's the planning department is doing that?
That's the planning board and the planning department. That's correct.
So mixed use is probably, going nowhere. It certainly should. But, when I visited Northampton a couple of years ago, when we were in the midst of it, they had a project going. It was a mixed use project, but it was mainly housing. There was about 5 stories of housing above the businesses, and it was income limited. If you don't do something like that to fix the affordable housing problem, it ain't ever going to get fixed. It's got to be something like that. You got to say if it's a single, if it's a family of 4, the maximum income can be $80,000, or if it's a family of 2, the maximum.
I actually really don't think that's the answer, Jay. I think that that's the model that we've been pursuing in the United States for the last 40 years, and it just hasn't worked. It hasn't worked in Rhode Island. It hasn't worked around the country. What we're particularly places like California, what we're finding is when you allow the construction of market rate units to be tied to the lesser production of affordable units, you always end up with an imbalance. And the idea of tying properties up with deed restrictions doesn't work very well either. And I've got a map in my office that demonstrates the problem here in South Kingstown. In South Kingstown right now, the affordable dwelling unit price is $329,000. That's what an affordable unit is in South Kingstown. When we do these deed restricted properties for $329,000, what we're seeing is East Matunic construction. We're seeing the developer come in and do, maybe 30 units in East Matunic farm, and he puts in 3 or 4 units of low income housing, and they go to people who are retired coming out of Massachusetts who don't have any income and therefore qualify as low income because their assets aren't considered in the evaluation. They have $1 million in the bank and they got no problem paying cash for the building if they wanted to, but they've got low income because they're both retired. That's what the affordable housing model that says you've got to produce low income units that are tied to income and tied to deed restrictions does. Now for the working class guy who's making $60,000, 329 in an affordable unit that will never, ever be able to be sold for more than the low income rate or low income number, whatever that number is 10 years from now, sitting next to a house that he can buy for $330, $340 and improve himself on the weekends and sell 3 or 4 or 5 years from now and make a profit on. It just doesn't work. The
Rob,
people are looking for the opportunities to improve their lives while the other units end up being occupied by quirky things like students and retirees.
I guess I didn't make myself clear. The project in Northampton was done by a consortium. It was part of the state of Massachusetts, 3 or 4 banks, 2 or 3 construction companies. They were designed to be rental units, and that is not broken. You know, that works, and
So
it worked. It's working there, and it's working in a lot of places in the country. And if we don't do something like that, we're stuck in the mud.
rental
We're not going
units
to go
can,
anywhere. As you said,
rental units can
you're
in
going to have
fact.
5%, and you're going to have 5% no matter what.
Yeah, rental
It's going to
units,
take something big like a state, town, bank, construction consortium to do it. And those things are happening, and that's something that we ought to be looking at and say in South Kingstown.
yeah. No, I think you're right that the rental market is a place where there's opportunity for
That's right,
improvement.
rental, yeah.
I think maybe we get some more information on what happened with that place in Northampton, because I think it's a good model. I've got a picture of it with all the people who were involved, all the companies that were involved. They had a big sign out front, and I'll see what I can find out about that and send it to you. I mean, it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. Nothing does in government, but it would be something to take a look at as a real solution to a real problem.
Yep. Any solutions, are worth exploring. We've got a number of those sorts of properties here in town. Meadowbrook Apartments is a rental Section 8 corporate owned. It's a nonprofit corporation, but a corporate owned group in Providence owns it, and it probably accounts for maybe 75% of all the Section 8 vouchers expended in South Kingstown on a monthly basis.
Yeah, I don't think we'd want to do Section 8. I think we want to do something other than that. But yeah, let me see what I can find out. By the way, we were talking about what's happening with the COVID thing, and I just want to give you an example of what's happening here in South Kingstown and what's happening all over the country, I think. And you're probably all aware of it anyhow. But I went to get my propane filled for my fireplace, and I sent my contract in on like the 25th of August. And, I kept waiting to get an answer back from the local people at AmeriGas. I called on the 29th and they said they hadn't received it yet. I called again. I couldn't get them. I got a busy signal. I finally got in touch with them a week into September, and they closed the office. They sent the people elsewhere, some of them. They have no office there anymore. Everything is being handled by a central call center, I guess. People are working at home, but it's a centralized call center thing. And there's no more local service. So if I have a situation, I want to go by and see them, I can't do it. I've got to get on the phone and wait my turn in line and do all these things. And that's the model I think that's going to go forward. We're going to see a lot fewer people in the service industry locally. We're going to see a lot of companies centralizing elsewhere and closing offices. It's certainly happening in the big cities where, you know, in Boston, office rates are going way down and offices unoccupied are going way up because companies just are going to the home employment model or to the centralized model. So it's happening here too. Maybe that's the only example in South Kingstown, but you know, it's a trend.
It'll be nice to have their ugly thing on route, whatever it is, 102 gone.
Well,
That'll
no,
be-
they're going to use that for refilling. Still, the trucks go in and out of there. It's just the office that is closed. The good part of it is closed.
Okay. That's really one of the uglier places around.
Yeah.
When the all the apartments got approved for up at the Commons, I never thought that they would be a good investment, but they are sold out. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're getting top dollar. I mean, the rental apartments is where it's at right now. And the residential real estate market is booming. Commercial, especially retail, forget it. Prices are not going up, they're going down. There's more and more storefronts vacant. And I think that's going to be a trend going into the future. I can tell you on dry cleaning, I'll tell you that industry. When the government closed in March, 80% loss of sales. And now at 50% because nobody's working. They're still at home for the most part. You're still not going to weddings and funerals or bar mitzvahs or events per se. And so what's there to clean? You know, business attire, going out to dinner, you know, going to anything is not there. So in the dry cleaning industry, we've switched to wash, dry, fold because a lot of the apartment complexes have laundry facilities, but they don't open them up because per COVID restrictions, they have to monitor it, clean it in between each use. And so they've closed those facilities. So where wash, dry, fold sales at Pier Cleaners in March were 9% of sales, they now represent, we had to pivot to get the business. They're now 23% of sales, an increase of 67%. I did the numbers yesterday. And where in the bleakest days when it was 80% off, we were only 58% off. And I think that was because it was starting to be summer and I had an influx of people. Last week we were 14% down in sales compared to my industry that's still 40 to 50% down. And it's because we pivoted and we do a lot of pickup and delivery in vans, and the cleaners that stayed the model that you just have your store, they're the ones that are closing. Elite Cleaners in Westerly has been there for years, a strong competitor. They closed their doors last week. We're now basically the only game in town. And we took over a place in Stonington, Connecticut, and merged our store into that. So we closed the store to move to the bigger store. My competitor was bigger, but they corporately were going under. So I picked that up. And now in those areas, we're the only game in town. So I've got market share, and that's how we're surviving. We were 20% up in sales before March. By March 15th, we were $80,000 higher in sales than 2019. Last week, my sales through last week, we were down $276,000 compared to last year, year to date. So the $80,000 that were up is gone, and we're $276,000 below last year. All right, that's the service business that has been impacted. Now, there are other companies that have done putting in landscapers, putting in patios and that kind of thing. They're having a very good year. They're above last year, but it all depends on what your niche is. And I foresee a third of the dry cleaners going under. All right, and nationwide. And I'm on the national board now, so I got that. Retail landlords are renegotiating their leases that are tied to sales to help the restaurants or the retail establishments survive. At the mall, we've done it a lot of times, and other landlords that I've negotiated with have done it as well. So it's yeah, I think they'll do a PPP. I think that, but the political climate in Washington really killed a lot of businesses.
Larry, is the wash, dry, fold place across from Crazy Burger open?
Nope, they closed. The laundromat there
Yeah.
owned the building, and he sold the building for like twice what he had paid for it. And he took all his equipment, put it in storage, and they closed. And so
That's where I used to go.
yeah.
Really, it was great, clean and wonderful. Oh dear. Okay.
A couple of those people are working for me now. I've installed about $150,000 to $175,000 worth of new equipment in my laundromat because it's going crazy. And I've done very well in there. All right, and my wash, dry, fold. A lot of them were their customers that now come here. I don't want to grow at the expense of my competitors. I mean, I want to be able to grow on merit. It hurts me when a place closes, and I gain sales that way. I'm just, it's against my nature. I should be happy. I guess I am, but the people that were doing wash, dry, fold there were charging 75 cents a pound. And when they called us, it was a lot more. And we said, but they're out of business. There's a reason why. And it's there. So it's ugly. I think we need to get off this topic. I'm getting depressed. I think we've the only concern the restaurants had, and that's who basically we helped out as best we could, was the December 8th, and I just wanted to forward that to the town. That's what I've heard on the street.
Yeah, so you can tell folks that it's because the ordinance ends on the 8th. It will be addressed by the council. They just need to, we need to schedule a hearing for it because it's an ordinance. So we'll publish the hearing date probably on the 26th, and then we'll have that public hearing quite likely. I think it's November 11th will be that meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
So is that going to be a problem because the election? Because my understanding is that as soon as the election is over, the new councilors.
It's the 12th. No, it's not.
They immediately become the office holders. Is that correct?
There's one session between. There's one lame duck session, if you will.
Yeah.
The election is on November 3rd, and then there is a council meeting on, it looks like November 9th.
And then the other-
So that meeting, that agenda item with the town council ought to be sooner rather than later.
Yep, it'll be noticed on the 26th. They'll publish notification on the 26th. There's no danger of anyone having this become a problem. It's just not an issue. It's just not an issue. I mean, the worst case scenario is that we extend it by executive order after the ordinance expires. It's just not going to be an issue.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. I think Main Street looks really good where they cleaned it all up.
Oh, it
The
looks so
landscape
much
and the trim the
better.
trees.
Oh, it's so much better. It looks like somebody cares. It's wonderful.
Right. And I think that just need more traffic. And without Brickley's being open, that it was a long summer for the people on Main Street.
Yeah.
The traffic was not there.
Yeah.
The only other thing I have on Main Street was that one of the principals of Green Line Apothecary called me last week. And they're doing all those renovations to the old South County Motors. And they brought up the fact that, hey, Larry, what's happening with the Saugatucket River? We've got a steep embankment there behind us, but we would like to enhance it and bring some traffic down to whatever's going to be built when it's going to be built. Should I be investing in a stairwell on the side of the building to bring it down to something at the river, so that if the town ever develops the river, like the vision that was provided by the URI class, I'd like to be able to do it now. But if what's the possibility of reality with that, and what's the time frame on that? Because he's getting cheap money now because the rates are so low. But does he spend the $50,000 to $100,000 to do that? And it's a walkway to nowhere. And I said, we'd like to do something, but we don't have the funds to do it. We got to find the grant money to design it, and then it would be the money to do it. And I said, not high in the next 5 years.
So anything that they do there is subject to DEM if it's in
Yes,
X
it is.
number of feet of the river. So they should be pretty careful about doing anything on their own.
Yeah, well, he doesn't want to invest any time and effort and money unless it was definitely going to happen, or in my lifetime.
Right.
So
So
Larry, that's a nice segue for us to get to the next item.
That's why I brought it up, Joanne.
Perfect.
So I will say that Ken had spoken to John Schock about this, because the town actually owns the parcel of land adjacent to his. And what we ended up, telling him was, look, first, it is DEM jurisdiction because it is a Saugatucket River, and the topography is not great. It is a pretty steep embankment. It would have to compete, and will have to compete with other capital projects that we would put money into. So if we're looking at trying to improve the town piece, it's not a great candidate for expenditure at this point. It's just tough topography. It's not connected, and it's a DEM jurisdictional question. So there's a lot of downside to trying to make that work.
I do the water testing on the Saugatucket River.
Yep.
And I have to tell you that we finally got one reading, in which there was less than 10 whatever's of fecal
Col-
material in that water. It's the
Colony forming
first,
units.
it's the first time in 6 years
Woo!
we've been down, and normally the number is in the hundreds and in the thousands. And once this summer,
Wow.
So not to turn this into a science lesson, but then what, we said that it was because of bird and dog poop.
no, that's what John Chalk says.
Okay, well, then I don't buy it, that unless your one reading is an anomaly, but if the reading is legit, then it starts to question what we've heard as the source of the E. coli.
Well, I do think that our one reading was so erratic that we can't put a whole lot of faith in that one reading. That definitely seems to be,
It might have been an error. I mean,
well,
it's certainly not rain that's diluted anything.
yeah. It hadn't rained, which also meant
No.
it hadn't
And washed into the river.
hadn't
Flushed,
flushed
right.
anything into the river. So that's the other side of it. So I don't know. That was 2 weeks ago. I go out again next Wednesday and I'll get,
So do you take more than one reading at one location though, right?
yes.
Yeah, so if the other ones are off, then it's,
Could the Tower Hill Road construction have helped that reading in any way?
I think so.
And I don't think so. I think that's too far up. I think by the time anything entering the water up there got down, it would have settled. No, I think it's right. It's right along, it's that section right along by Arnold and by where the Green Line Apothecary is and all in there. There's not a lot of water in there.
Right.
From May until January or something, there's really not a lot of water. I mean, I have to use an extension thing to get down to get the water from the dock now. Because there's very little water.
let's hope it's an improving trend, but I'm a little doubtful.
No, I don't think so. I think it's much
I
more
don't
likely.
think so
a
either.
fluke. It's much more likely a fluke. The numbers do vary quite a bit. They range from 400 to 1,500, and that can be but I don't think. But I just thought it was very exciting to see a
That was
black
good news.
Yeah, we'll take it.
number was really nice.
All right, so Joanne and Brian, you got the floor.
Brian found a great website, the Economic Development Administration. Go ahead, take it away, Brian.
Thank you. So in previous meetings, we had discussed looking for funding sources to help existing businesses in town and also attract new businesses into our town. So one funding source that I located was the U.S. Economic Development Administration, and I hope everyone got the attachment, had time to look at it, their investment priorities. And that is, those are the types of projects that they are willing to fund. And so what I would like the committee to do is to think about these priorities, and do they match our priorities in South Kingstown? So did everyone have an opportunity to read this sent out?
Well, the other thing, Brian, is we wanted our group to propose something to the town council. And maybe it has to wait till after the election, but maybe we can draft a letter and get something, how we'd like to look into grants to start moving ahead on Saugatucket improvements
Right. But
with the town's blessing.
But the EDA investment priorities, I don't see that as a match. Saugatucket. All right, so if you look at it, they have 5 priorities that they're willing to fund. It's their money, so recovery and resilience, projects that assist economic resilience, including business continuity and preparedness, recovery from natural disasters and economic shocks to ensure U.S. communities are globally competitive. So do we have anything like that? Critical infrastructure, projects that establish the fundamental building blocks of a prosperous and innovative climate-centric economy and a secure platform for American business, including physical, broadband, energy, roads, water, sewer, and other economic infrastructure. Do you have any interest in that?
Broadband, yes.
Broadband, yeah, exactly.
Third one is workforce development and manufacturing. Projects that support the planning and implementation of infrastructure for skills, training centers, and related facilities that address the hiring needs of the business community, particularly in the manufacturing sector. Do you have any interest in that? Exports, primarily infrastructure projects that enhance community assets such as port facilities. I don't think we have anything for that. Opportunity zones. We're in an opportunity zone, right, Rob?
Yes.
Right, planning and implementation projects aimed at attracting private investment, including from opportunity funds, to grow businesses and create jobs in census tracts that have been designated as opportunity zones. This includes targeted projects located within an opportunity zone, projects that, while not located within an opportunity zone, have a clear intent of benefiting nearby opportunity zones, and regional projects. Do you have any interest in that?
Wait, is the opportunity zone, isn't that, am I mixing something? Is that at URI?
Yes.
That's the thing at URI, which is
there's a-
supposed to be for poor people, but actually went to URI?
Well, it goes beyond the campus, but most of it is on campus. That's true.
Is any of it in West Kingston?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, what about the Schneider Electric Building?
Nope, not that far.
It's
No,
not that far.
Yeah.
However, that says if it affects the people in the opportunity zone.
Right. That's the interesting thing about that.
So it could be, you can stretch that into that segment would qualify to develop APC Snyder.
Yeah, well,
It's for sale, you know.
Yeah.
I can't afford it.
It's got a lot of clean electricity though, Jay.
Plus, it doesn't fit my needs.
How much are they asking for it?
I think it's on the market for 9.
Is the building totally vacant?
I don't know for sure, but a lot of folks are remote working now. So it may not be completely vacant.
When I drive by there are still cars out
Yeah.
front, but not very many.
Yeah.
You know,
Let's go back to, let's finish up with Brian's thing first.
well, I think we're working on that.
Oh, okay.
That was number 5, right, Brian?
That's all right. There's five.
You know, we gotta, you know, make sure that something positive happens with that building. It's an asset that you know, it's got to be attractive to somebody, and we've got to make it more attractive by what we do in the EDC and in the town. Whether it's advertising it or doing something, I don't know. Snyder's not going to be too aggressive about it. $9 million is peanuts to them. They don't care. They're still getting.
If I can jump in here. So last meeting, Larry mentioned Maria Mack and this grant that was available, but we got it at the 11th hour. So there was nothing that could be, you know, implemented. So I guess the question is, do we need to send a letter to the town council asking if we can research grants to specifically write something that we can get an engineer architect for the Saugatucket River development, piggybacking on what the students had created as a foundation of ideas? Do we need to, you know, because there's other grants out there. So do we have to have some kind of, you know, permission?
I don't think we need permission to do that. I think we're spending our time and we're researching it. But I'd like to find them and then present them after we've worked on them. And
I don't think there's any problem with doing the research. The only challenge would come if you were committing the town to a match. That's where you're going to run into a problem. Well, potentially. I mean, that's when the council needs to be involved.
Personally, I think that doing the development along the Saugatucket, you would have the support of the community. However, because it's green, it's going to open up the beautiful Saugatucket, and we know what it really looks like. So it'd be an improvement. You've already got one property owner that would be involved in it, is interested in it. I think the other ones are interested in it. The problem is with the school situation and bonding and everything else. If we needed $5 million to do it or something like that, and you'd have to go get a bond, I don't think we're going to have the necessary ratios after the school department gets done, and that will definitely hold back a lot of different projects in town, depending on what transpires and what actually gets done.
So I think we're barking up the wrong tree. We're barking up the wrong tree. We're looking at this project, and we're looking at the project in toto. I think if we look at the amphitheater and call it flood control, we could get a good segment of we could get some money for that.
Yeah.
That could be a start. If you try to do this thing all at once, it's going to be overwhelming. If you piecemeal it, and make that the first objective, flood control, you might have a better chance of getting grants, and it might be enough of an impetus to get other things happening there. And I don't have COVID. I've got to.
I agree with Jay. We have to do something. Do we have to have, is it something that Brian and I can write up a grant, or do we have to turn it over to Brian? Do we need permission to, if we're going to do all this research and then we give the text and the copy to Brian to write it, or do we sit down with you and do it? Or, if we find some grant?
Yeah, so the answer is you can do research with the authority you've got. There's no problem in doing research and making a recommendation to the town council. That's your charge. So if you want to find grants, if you want to complete applications for that matter, you can do that. But ultimately to submit an application, especially if it's going to require a match by the town, you're going to need the town council's authority.
Right.
So if we do an application, I guess we need the committee's approval on what exactly. Are we all going to go forward for the amphitheater? Is that going to be the goal that we're all looking at?
No, I don't think we're ready. See, this troubles me a lot. I don't think that's not a town decision that's what we should do. We aren't even there yet. Now, I think if you did something about flood control or water quality that didn't, I don't know what it would look like, but no, I don't think the amphitheater is the thing we want to go forward with. We haven't had a discussion in the town about which of the elements the kids suggested are the ones that we should go forward with. And if we do it too much in a piecemeal thing, it'll be really just a hodgepodge stuff. So I think piecemeal is good if there's some ground laying thing we can do. If the grant could be to take the kids' work and to distill it down into a cogent plan so that we didn't have 5 different proposals, but we had one that had pretty much some town backing, that would be good. But I don't think any of the things that the Economic Business Administration is proposing here, any of these categories fit that. So we'd need a different grant for that, but there are grants that do that. I did apply for one. I did have to work with the planning department as we wrote the grant, because it needed to have some match with the planning department. So we had to get letters and agreement and, all that kind of stuff. And it was a productive process, but we didn't get the grant. It was a national competition. But I think we need first to decide what it is that we're talking about when we say we want to do something on the Saugatucket River. And this kids' work is not sufficient to go forward with that at this moment.
I agree on the one hand, and on the other hand, I disagree. What they did is not sufficient. You're correct. But the amphitheater as a flood control is something that I think we could get a grant for And as the EDC, we're supposed to be helping business. And what could help business more than preventing flooding on Lower Main Street when we have these, weather events that are not the standard weather events. If we got nothing other than the amphitheater, the use for other events and for the schools and everything would be beneficial. It would be like, cream on the cake. So I think we're on the right track if we home in on one thing and then see what we can do on that. I think it's going to be flood control grants. I think are probably one of the easier grants to get. They're compelling. You can talk about economic damage to the community and to the businesses, and I think that that's.
So the thing about the outside, Jay, what going on, piggybacking on that is, it's an outside, it almost goes to take it outside grant that they're looking for. The gazebo down in Narragansett did well this summer. They had the concerts out there, safe spacing, people were all around, they wore their masks. People are looking for outside venues to gather in a spacious thing. That whole Saugatucket fair is expansive enough that we should be enhanced and bring some light down there of more.
I agree, and I also want to agree with Susan again in that we're not ready because the town really needs to do an engineering study to figure out what it would take to do something like that. How many cubic yards of dirt has to be moved? Where's the dirt going to go? How much is that going to cost? We've got to do those things first. It's got to be, and I've said this, I don't know how many times in the past, so I'll say it one more time, because I do retro mentioning all the time. It needs to be shovel ready.
All right, Jay, but the key is, I think the focus on the first grant has to be for funding the study to do what Susan said of bringing their vision into one and couple it with the engineering that needs to be done as well, Jay. So I agree with you, all of you, but the funding for the grant, the town is not going to fund it. It's not going to be in it. It's not going to be the town's engineering that's going to be doing this. It will be a grant for a private firm under a RFP or something that would then interact with the town's engineering and the town staff. But first, as Susan said, before you go get prices on the engineering to do it, it needs to be vetted by the town, the community. And Susan's right. However, I don't think that I don't want this to be a bunch of charades or whatever they're called, and we've already done that. I think that the company that we hire to do it can take the 10 visions that from the kids into one through our guidance and then present it publicly, get the response from the public on a specific proposal. And that could be piecemeal, or it could be the grand vision, and then part one, and get that vetted and then present that to the town council after having been vetted by the community. And
Larry, I got to disagree with you, Larry. I think the things that you say need to be done, but they need to be done for step one, flood control. We need to home in on one thing. We need to be targeted. We need to get that done. That's the biggest impact that we're going to have on that area anyhow. And, the rest of it will flow later on. If you try to get an engineering firm to go through all that business everything those kids came up with and try to put it into a package is going to be very expensive. It's going to be hard to get a grant to do it. If the whole thing is couched as flood control, including the planning, get a grant to do the planning for the flood, the engineering work for the flood control, and get on with it. If you overcomplicate it, you're going to underachieve it. You can quote me on that.
Just
Well,
like to,
so does Brian's second point, critical infrastructure, is that,
flood
that you mentioned broadband and sewers, so it didn't,
Yeah, what about Matunic, right?
So,
Don't they have critical infrastructure issues in the future? Matunic, right?
no, I was
here
thinking,
we have
I
a
was thinking,
wall that has to be built for sure.
Right, but isn't there an issue with
Tunic
the
Beach Road seawall has got to be rebuilt. No doubt about it. That's a good sub.
businesses down there, right?
Yep.
well, wait a minute, rebuild the seawall or move the wall, move the road?
No, rebuild the seawall. Moving the road is just not really going to happen.
If you build a seawall, then you got to have the Corps of Engineers.
That's correct.
And that's a whole long process.
No, we've already gone through the permitting process. We're already permitted for the extension of that wall.
A specific design.
It's shovel ready, as you say. Yep.
Where does the wall go? What do you tell us
So,
about?
yeah, where the wall, have you been down there recently in the last couple of years?
Yeah,
So there's a wall that's been constructed along the road. It ends, there's a chain link fence
right.
where it ends. It needs to go where the chain link fence begins all the way down to the trailer park.
Okay.
The mobile
Yeah. to the-
caravan,
Right, to the caravan thing before the town beach.
right.
So one of the things we had discussed was in the past was workforce development, particularly in the trades, the construction trades, whether plumbers, electricians, carpenters, and there's a shortage of that. And even now, I was talking to Ken from Phil's Restaurant, and he's having a hard time getting help culinary. And in fact, he was interested in maybe culinary training to attract people into the restaurant business. So that, to me, that falls under workforce development. I think we should consider that. If there's funding available to do that, and if we're looking at the Schneider building maybe being available, maybe we could get funds to either rent it or purchase it or whatever. So I'm just throwing it out there for people to think about these things, think outside the box.
It's also a potential reuse option for the high school.
Yes. In fact, we had one of the shop.
Wait, Brian Wagner, you mean the Schneider place is a reuse option for the high school?
No, the workforce development.
Oh, work as a, to be housed in a high school.
Yes.
Okay. I got confused.
Right, and we had, I think a year or two ago, we had one of the teachers from the high school attend our meeting and was interested in training for the trades, particularly for the construction trades, but they don't really have a program and they don't have any space for it anyways over at the high school.
Those students right now go to Charahoe, where they have the programs, and our money flows over to Charleston, Richmond, and Hopkinton.
So I just want to come back and talk briefly about the rules of engagement, because it's clear that we need to think about it a little bit differently. If we're going to be committing the town to spending money, obviously we need the council's approval. If we're going to be making an application that would commit town property, we want to build an amphitheater here, we have to go back to the town council before submitting that application. If we're going to do a workforce development grant application for the high school, we're going to have to go to the town council and quite possibly to the school committee. But the point is, it's resources, it's not just the dollars. So as you're thinking about what to do grant applications around, if we're committing public resources, staff, dollars, or property, then we really need to think about making sure that the council is on board before the application goes in.
And the application would come from the town. We would
Yes.
do the
But
research
it's
and present.
right, but it's not the kind of thing you want to present as a fait accompli. You don't want to go in and say, here's our application for a $10 million amphitheater, sign this, please. Yeah, that's not a meeting, that's not a one meeting kind of event. That's a bigger conversation.
Don't we have to have something in writing just to say that the Economic Development Committee wants to start looking into possible grants, to start looking at, for the first part, like you said, try to find a company to go and take what we looked at for Saugatucket and try to get a firm to look at the big picture and how we can start doing it in chunks, but look at the big picture first.
I think the committee has the authority to do research to inform its recommendations to the council. I don't know that you need the council to say, go forth, we bless you, and you may go do investigation. You can do investigation with the authority that you've got. You're fine going out and coming up with good ideas, identifying 3 pots of money that you could target, and going to the council and then saying, what we'd like to do is this project, and here's where we think the money is. We'd like your blessing to go ask for the money from those sources.
The only problem is we got that email from Maria Mack, and then it was too late, so then there's deadlines.
Right.
Well, no, but I think the problem is I personally feel we're not going to get very much further if we try to do this as this big committee. I think we need to say, maybe since Brian has already started looking at these grants and Joanne is interested in this, maybe we make one of our famous little subcommittees and we task somebody to go to identify, to find some, I think we need to find some grant, we need to think about what we'd like to do and then find some grant money that would do the initial stages of those things that we'd like to do. And then come back and talk to the committee about whether those grants seem feasible. Maria's thing came in too close to the deadline to do, but that's not the case for everything. There are plenty of grants. Some grants are ongoing, some have deadlines, whatever. That's part of what the little subcommittee would have to do. It would have to find something that had a long enough lead time so that we had time to do all the work internally so that we could write the grant and come to the agreement and submit it on time. But I don't think we're going to do it this way. We're not going forward.
There's no reason necessarily why you need a full subcommittee. You can go off as individuals and, come back to the committee and say, this is something that I did over the last couple of weeks or the last month. This is a good source, as Brian has tonight, and just, sort of work it as individuals and come back to the committee. And, as the ideas take shape and as the sources become clearer, work toward a proposal, a recommendation to the council.
Well, I think I know the ED. I'm just going to say, I know the EDC a little better than you do, Rob. And I think we've done very well when we've set up these little groups, and the little groups kind of talk to one another, and there's a lot of progress that happens in that. And so that's why I think a little group could
The only reason I get nervous about little groups and anything we call a subcommittee, because subcommittees of public bodies can easily become public bodies and therefore have to comply with the Open Meetings Act.
Oh, no, but we've always done this so that the subcommittee is a fraction of the committee.
Right. I know.
We've done really well with these.
Yeah, we have. We really have. It's gotten us through a couple of situations.
Yeah.
What I want to say is that I don't think we use all the tools at our benefit. We have congressmen, we have a senator, we have 2 senators, and we have a congressman. We ought to try to get their ear about getting some funding to do some studies if we want to have studies done. They seem to come up with money. That seems to be their real reason for being, to other than spend time in Washington to get money for projects back home so they can get reelected. So, you know, I don't think we've ever used our state reps, or federal reps to anywhere near the degree that we should be using them. You know, we could go off and try to do all these things on
Good
our own.
point.
But maybe the best way, but maybe we should double barrel it. We should try to do it on our own, but we should also get those guys involved.
I think, I mean, I know, since I know White House a little bit, and we can't go to White House and say, oh, we have a vague idea about something we'd like to do. Can you get us money for it? I think we'd have to go to White House and say, okay, we've got this climate change issue, and you know, can you fit us in somewhere? But we have to be able, we have to be able to give the little elevator speech, and we have to be able to, something
Exactly.
has to exist. And
And
we
you
are
have to have some
there.
writing.
Yeah.
I used to do appropriations for Senate, a senator, and you know, you have to have a grant application
Yeah,
essentially.
you have to have the concept all sort of
It's not a
mapped out.
formal, but it's a writing. It's a project.
Well, I mean, then we need to do that, don't we?
Yeah, I think
Well,
we
you
do.
have to identify the project and then you work on it. And the other thing, I worked on Senate staff in Washington for, I don't know, 6 years or something. And what I used to tell people who came looking for appropriations was, you're not going to get it this year. And they
Yeah.
said, well, why am I bothering? And I'd say, because you get the writing down and then we'll deal with it again next year. And they'd
Yeah.
say, okay, good, I'll
Right.
get funding next year. And I said, no, you're not going to get funding next year. Why am I doing this? Because in year 3 or 4, people on the committee will begin to understand that this is a high priority.
That's right.
Takes time.
Yeah.
You got to identify the projects and you got to push them.
How
So
long
the project we want to identify is a grant for a private firm to start looking at the Saugatucket River from the URI students' proposals?
No, that's too big. The student proposal is way too, we as a committee have to get rid of, you know, there were 4 groups and they came up with all kinds of different ideas. We can't just say the URI student. That's way too big a thing. We have to,
The ones that we listed, I'm sorry, the ones that we listed as our 10,
even the ones we listed don't fit together as a group. They're just a bunch that's just a list. We have to, I mean, I think if you wanted, you know, if you were looking at flood control and you wanted to think about the amphitheater, then you've got something you could start with, but I don't think we can just, the URI student project is just way too amorphous still to use as a.
the amphitheater, you know, how long has it been since we had the Saugatucket River study? 3 years?
2 years.
Years, because I applied for a
Renewal.
grant years ago to get us to the next stage, and we didn't.
And we're nowhere right now, so we need to change our approach. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's a definition of something, I forget what. But anyhow,
All right, so I'd like to wrap this up. I think we kicked it down the road quite a ways. If anybody would like to investigate and bring back at a later meeting any grants that they think that might pertain, and present them to the committee at the next meeting or the next meeting after that or whenever, I think that that's fine, and I think that that should happen. But I'd also like to add one more person to the little subcommittee that we have, that Brian and
Well, I just threw those 2 names out. I don't know whether they.
well, Brian and Joanne have started down the road. Now, if they don't want to be on the committee, they can back out of that. But I'd like to add one more person to that 3. I don't want to go more than 3 because we only have, I think, 10 on the committee right now. And that puts us well below any threshold to be accused of anything. Joanne, do you want to be involved? You're muted.
Joanne, you're on mute.
you couldn't read my lips. Yeah, no, I'll be happy to continue with Brian.
All right.
I do agree with Larry. A third person would be good just to have a little balance of, extra ideas. So
So Jay, Susan, anybody else? Anybody want to jump on with them?
The thing I'd be willing to do is to go back and look at the URI student project, particularly the amphitheater, since that seems to be the thing that's the most.
Easily funded.
Yeah, what I could do for Joanne and Brian is I could go back, look at the project and see if I could just sort of encapsulate that in a way that allowed them to kind of start thinking about what kind of grant material, what grant funding they should go after. So I guess I'd be willing to join their committee to do that. I don't think I can do more than that at the moment.
that would be great. You're giving us the copy
Well, I
and
would
the focus.
focus, not the copy. Because writing the grant is oh God, it's a pain in the butt.
I think.
I'll give you the grant I wrote before.
I think that's where some town staff might be able to help in the grant writing, but I don't want them involved.
No, I don't think so. We should be able to write the grant. We should be able to write the grant, and then we can say to the town, look at this, edit this, tell us what's wrong, but we have to write it. I don't think we can give it to them. It's too big a job.
And we'll do the legwork.
Yeah.
We'll do the research and do the legwork.
Yeah,
If after that's done, Susan, if after that's done, and you don't want to continue on the committee, I might join in then on the subcommittee.
okay, good. So we can have a relay team.
I can throw this out too. Just my time is pretty limited these days, but if you need any help, consultation from an engineering point of view, I've done projects. So not as a member of the committee, but just there to help, I can do that.
Okay,
Great.
And I'm actually still working full time, so
Yeah, right.
I'll have to be a little bit careful on that.
I'm retired and working full time.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That's not
I'm
fair.
retired and working without pay full-time.
Well, that's, yeah.
So I will, I'll entertain a motion that we do a subcommittee that's chaired by
Can I
Joey.
suggest that you call it either a
Call it a
working,
group. Let's just
a
call it
working
a
group
group.
or a
Working group.
task force?
Yeah, not a committee.
working group. How about that?
All right, and Susan's gonna be on it, and everybody knows that she's gonna be tagged out, and Jay submitted in. And anybody on the committee can add to it or give their viewpoints at any time, because this is not a 3-week.
It's not a committee, yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna be a long-term project.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so that's the vision. Do I hear a motion?
Brian, if I can just ask, can you just confirm, Brian, that action is actually noted on the agenda?
Yeah, hold on a second.
There's a recent ruling that in order to be able to vote on anything on a public body, you have to have noted it on the agenda that it might be voted on.
Well, we do talk about the economic development grant.
Yeah, but it's just noted as discussion regarding funding opportunities.
Okay, so I tell you what, let's not call it a working group. Let's just agree that the three of us, Brian, Joanne, and I will have a Zoom session in a week or so, and we'll talk about a bunch of things. I'll try to look at the URI.
Do some research.
We'll just do some research. We'll just la-di-da about, and then we'll come back next time. We'll put it on the agenda and we'll put something more
Okay,
working group more formally. We
that's
don't have,
fine. I feel good with that. Everybody else feel good with that?
Good.
We don't need a vote, so that's what we'll do.
All right, I marked that down as a matter for the next agenda, so we'll put it on with possible action on creating a working group.
Okay.
Okay.
Brian, another thing that's always on our agenda as the last item is discussion on any projects in town. Updates on any any economic development activities in town.
What happened?
That's
None are coming to mind outside of the normal development processes that we have going on. Nothing.
What about that development? Yeah.
What
The 28 acre vineyard.
Behind
Oh,
Prout.
okay. So let's talk about the Shepherd's Run development. Ryan Schoen, who is the proponent of that development, has come forward with a very interesting plan. It preserves the old mansion that is back there that I never knew was back there, but is actually a beautiful historic building, interestingly enough, constructed at the height of the Depression by the same architect who did the renovations on the Dunes Club following the 38 hurricane. It's also got some newer institutional buildings back there that were used as dormitories for the religious boarding school that was there. And his proposal is to convert it to a 33-room, very small boutique hotel with a restaurant, an outdoor event space, and vineyards, and actually run a winery bottling their grapes. The nice thing is yeah, it's currently or was currently zoned for R80, so you would not have it being cut up into subdivisions. It will preserve a lot of open space. I think the biggest concern that has been raised consistently has been the issue of wastewater disposal back there, being so close to the narrow river. There is a institutionally sized septic system back there, I believe designed to handle 200 individuals. You know, it was sized to suit the boarding school that was there. It's not all that old, mid 2000s, and hasn't seen a lot of use since it was put in. It appears that it should be able to handle the use that's there rather than running sewers down there. A lot of this is depending on the feedback that we're expecting from CRMC in looking at it in terms of the narrow river SAM. So if we get a positive thumbs up from them on the environmental side, it sounds like we may have a nice little project back there for that property.
So that's the next hurdle then.
Yeah, it's in CRMC now. They're the project proponents are waiting to hear back from them to see what they have to say. And ultimately, that doesn't kill the project. It may require them to incur the cost of running sewers into it.
Right.
Which is a double-edged sword. The sewers are great for the environment, but CRMC also doesn't like sewers because it tends to encourage additional development. So we're not quite sure which way they're going to look at it.
Yep.
And then what about Holly Street? What's going on there with the cottage units and the?
That is slogging along. I saw that when I first started back in March, and we haven't had them back for the next set of their development review.
Who's
Okay.
the developer?
Scott Halberg, isn't it?
Scott Halberg, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
What
I
about-
understand
what
it, he
about
was-
rezoning of that of the land necessary to do what this proposed developer wants.
For the Shepherd's Run.
Yeah,
Special
That-
management district.
it
changes
was-
to the comp plan, adding that property to the.
It all received a positive recommendation from the planning board and is going up to the,
Already done.
oh, it's already done.
It's done.
I'm thinking of a different one.
But,
I'm
but
thinking of the
the,
cottage zoning stuff.
Yeah,
But
the
it's
cottage
not-
zoning has been approved by the planning board. It's probably going to go back to the planning board.
Correct. That's what I heard based on your
Okay, yeah.
conversation today.
but the special management district is constricted to the uses that Shepherd's Run wants.
That's correct.
So when
Correct.
it's extended on that other side of Route 1, it's not going to be allowing the same uses as the SMD on the other side of the road.
That's fine.
Correct. The planning board was very clear in its recommendation that the adaptive reuse of the existing buildings there were a key component of their decision to approve the use. And so they are restricting it to the uses that are proposed in the structures that are there or are proposed as part of the project. And there is a part of the project down the line where they're proposing to maybe build some separate bungalow hotel units off to one side. But that's a phase 3. It's not part of the initial project.
Great.
So that Chase Bank is open, is it, or not open? It's open?
I think it is. I only know that from driving by. It looks open.
Yeah, it does look like they took all their banners off and put their real sign up.
Looks like a credit union is open.
What is that?
Before we adjourn, I'd like to discuss something about our survey of businesses that occurred back in 2015. Susan and I have been looking at that. I owe her some information, but I think it would be good to speak briefly about it at the meeting here.
Well,
Is it-
I want to make sure, I just want to make sure that, I think I misled, as we say in my family, which means misled. I misled you a little bit. I tried not to let you go down this route. But Henry and I were asking about this information as a survey of projects, data projects around the town, and not with the idea that we were suggesting that this would be updated, reinstated, whatever. It was just, it's a historical project or whatever to look around and see what's going on. So I'm afraid it got interpreted as something that we might be suggesting should be updated. It's not that I don't, I'm not making any comment on whether it should or shouldn't be updated, but the thing that Henry and I were doing was not a promise or even a suggestion that it would be updated.
Well, I kind of understood that.
Okay, good.
In thinking about it, that's what I wanted to discuss. We've got the data in 2015. I think that we should go back to Nellie Gorbea, Secretary of State,
Mhm.
and get the latest information. And I think we should get it every year. We can bump up the data every year against the previous year's data, and we can see what's happening to businesses in town. It'd be interesting to know if we still have 2,100 or 2,200 businesses in this town, like we did in 2015. And we could very simply with the Excel spreadsheet go through and match up and determine who's left and who's remaining and so on.
I had a look at those data. I looked at that spreadsheet. Henry had provided a clean copy. I had a chance to look at it. I think you're right. I think there's potentially some use to keeping that fresh. That having been said, the Secretary of State's database is refreshed continuously. So we could do queries against that database. I guess the thing that I would ask about the spreadsheet, the data set locally is what questions do we want to be able to answer? And if we can come up with a good set of questions that we want to be able to answer, then building a data set that meets that call is a useful thing. But if it's just how many businesses that we can ping the Secretary of State for, I think it is worth the exercise of finding out how many, you know, I don't know what it is, dry cleaners are in town on, you know, in any given year. I mean, watching what's happening over time is a useful thing. So I do like the idea of having that data refreshed and having the ability to go back and say, in the last 10 years, this is what happened in this industry. Is it?
But
the
I
la-
thought,
the last time-
I thought, didn't you have to do a lot of stuff to move from the Secretary of State's data to something that was useful for us? What did
Yeah.
you have to
He
do?
did a lot of- he did a
was
lot of work.
really playing around with Excel. That's really what I did. I played around with Excel. What was difficult about the survey was getting everybody to agree on the questions. I had 20 different revisions of the questions for the survey, and that's what took all the time.
Oh,
I
for
didn't have
the
any problem.
survey itself, but not for the data? Oh, I didn't understand that.
That
Okay,
wasn't a problem for me, no. And,
okay.
you know, and the kind of information that comes out of the data is interesting. Like foreign ownership, we actually have businesses that had businesses in town that were foreign owned, including Snyder, but others. Single proprietorships. You know, we find out who's working at home and who's not working at home by the business locations and so on. Out of state ownership. You know, there are a lot of things that are there.
What about revenue generated by the businesses? Does it include that kind of data?
No. One of the things that
information
you
they
understand
would
about
get
data,
Department of Taxation. They
the
would
input.
doing that.
the input to the data is every corporation in the state has to file an annual report. So when they file their annual report, then the data that's put into that is organized by row column to make an Excel spreadsheet. From there, we can find out, what standard industry codes are being used, profit, nonprofit, domestic or foreign, who the owners are, or their registered agents, and it goes on and on.
Business
But-
location, ownership location.
Yeah, but that's the key though. The document that they file every year, which is their annual report, has all the data elements that go onto the spreadsheet. And that's the only way they can get it.
I remember the classifications though being sort of wonky.
Yeah,
Descriptions that folks provided are not consistent
they're
to
not standard. Yeah.
construction industry.
They're
There was,
supposed to provide an industry zip
On the
code
data
that
sheet.
corresponds to their tax return.
yeah, I don't remember a SIC
So-
code column. It must be there. I
There's no sick.
don't remember.
There's no
Oh,
SIC code.
SIC code.
No.
The data provided is worked by the Secretary of State's office, and everything I saw was pretty consistent. They
Yeah,
classify it. They look at what's down on the report, and they fit it into one of their classifications. Even if it doesn't fit, they fit it in.
That's what I think I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, I don't have a problem with you. Go ahead and get another set of data. And I remember distinctly that it took you a couple of months to clean it up.
Yeah, that's what I
You- you
recall
were
too.
working- You were working off of 3 lists, and the one that you thought was gonna have all the data didn't have it, but you know all that now. So I
Sure.
know it'll be much easier for you to do this
Different
stuff.
I had
But
3
go
different
ahead and do that, because Rob, once he gives you the data, that's all he's gonna give you.
Yeah.
You can then use Henry or whoever to massage it any way you want. It's getting the data and organized.
So the thing about data is it's useful when you have, series over time. Data is useful when you have lots of it and when it comes in increments that make sense. So 5 years later, it makes sense. No, 5-year increments is a big increment, but that's okay. I think that there's virtue to doing it, Jay. I
would suggest that
By that data set.
it would be a good thing to do it annually. Just get the list.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Maybe not do anything with it, or maybe do something with it, depending on what the situation is.
But Jay, I do still want to talk to you about the data dictionary notion, that, because I think that's going to relate to what we're doing in this other committee as well. But yes, get the data. Let's keep going with that. Good. All right. Well, I'm glad you didn't think I was offering to have it updated.
Now
My
you-
battery's
something to do.
about, I may have to leave this meeting because my battery's about to go out.
Well, I
I've
think
been,
we're just-
I've been on Zoom all day and none of it's been connected to the outlet. So can I be excused? Yes?
Yep. I
Okay.
mean, does anybody have anything else to talk about? I think we've addressed the agenda. I was ready to have a motion to adjourn anyway.
Okay, good.
All right?
Why don't you make the motion to adjourn?
Me? I make a motion to adjourn.
Wagner, second?
I second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a good night,
folks.
everybody.
Thank you, you
you.
too.
Yep.
Nice to meet you, Brian
Yeah,
Wagner. I'll talk to you later, Brian Smith.
bye.
See you later, guys.
So long.